the most valuable resource of the 21st century is not oil, it is semiconductors. And one small island absolutely dominates their production. But what if that island sits at the center of a superpower standoff? What if, in a major conflict, the factories that power the digital world were themselves targeted, triggering a massive global economic shock? This is not a far-fetched scenario. It is one of the most dangerous realities of the new Cold War, the chip war, and it is all centered on this one island, Taiwan. To understand this conflict, you first need to understand what is at stake. Semiconductors, or simply chips, are the brains of the modern world. They power our phones, cars, data centers, hospitals, financial systems, and increasingly our militaries. They guide missiles, support radar, and drive the artificial intelligence that is reshaping both civilian life and modern warfare. For decades, the world ran on oil. Today, you could argue, it runs on silicon. And just like oil, the country that controls the supply of advanced chips holds enormous power. But this dependency may be even more dangerous than old energy dependence, because it is so concentrated. If the production of advanced chips were suddenly disrupted, the consequences would be immediate and severe. Electronics production would stall, car manufacturing would suffer, medical technology, communications, and computing infrastructure would all be hit. Estimates suggest that a conflict over Taiwan could cost the global economy more than $10 trillion in the first year alone. So this is not just a technology story, it is a story about a strategic dependency. So how did one small island just over 110 miles off the coast of mainland China become the center of this critical industry? The answer is TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, and the vision of its founder, Morris Chang. In the 1980s, Chang saw an opportunity. At that time, most major tech firms designed and manufactured their own chips. That made innovation expensive and difficult. Chang's idea was different: create a company that would manufacture chips for other firms without designing its own. In other words, TSMC would become a trusted manufacturing partner for the world's chip designers. That idea changed the industry. Companies like Apple, Nvidia, Qualcomm, and AMD could focus on design, while TSMC focuses on manufacturing. Over time, it became the best in the world at producing the most advanced chips. Today, TSMC accounts for roughly 70% of the global foundry market. Even more importantly, it produces more than 90% of the world's most advanced logic chips, the kind used in cutting-edge AI, supercomputers, and advanced military systems. That means Taiwan is not just important in the chip industry, it is central to it. This extraordinary concentration of technological power in Taiwan has created a major geopolitical problem. For the United States, the relationship is both profitable and dangerous. American firms dominate chip design and rely heavily on TSMC for manufacturing. But that also means a large part of America's tech economy and even parts of its national security infrastructure depend on a supply chain running through one of the world's most dangerous flashpoints. For China, the problem is even more urgent. China is a manufacturing giant, but for decades it has remained dependent on imported semiconductors, especially the most advanced ones. Beijing has long understood this as a strategic vulnerability. That is why it launched major efforts to build semiconductor self-sufficiency, including the well-known Made in China 2025 plan. But despite massive investment, China has struggled to catch up in advanced chip making. It remains far from its original ambitions, especially at the leading edge. In response, the United States has tried to slow China down. Washington has imposed sweeping export controls to restrict China's access to advanced chips, chip design software, and the high-end equipment needed to manufacture them. The result is that the semiconductor industry is no longer just an economic sector. It is now one of the main battlegrounds in the rivalry between the United States and China. This brings us to Taiwan's precarious position. Its dominance in semiconductors has given rise to a concept often called the silicon shield. The idea is simple. First, Taiwan's chip industry may deter China, because a conflict risks destroying the very factories Beijing most wants to control. Second, Taiwan's central role in the global economy makes it strategically important to the United States, Japan, and others, because a disruption in Taiwanese chip production would trigger a worldwide crisis. In that sense, semiconductors act like a shield. They make Taiwan too important to ignore and potentially too costly to attack. But the silicon shield is also deeply risky. Some argue it may make Taiwan more tempting, not least because control over TSMC would give extraordinary leverage over the global economy. Others argue the shield may slowly weaken as the United States, Europe, and Japan invest in their own chip manufacturing. And then there is the darkest possibility. In a war, Taiwan's greatest strength could become its greatest vulnerability. Some strategists have openly worried that the factories might need to be disabled or destroyed to keep them from falling intact into Chinese hands. That is what makes the shield both powerful and fragile. The world has now realized the danger of depending so heavily on a single island. A global scramble is underway to diversify semiconductor production. The most visible example is the CHIPS and Science Act in the United States. It includes major subsidies and incentives for building chip factories on American soil. TSMC, Intel, and Samsung are all investing in major facilities in places like Arizona and Texas. The goal is to rebuild advanced manufacturing capacity and reduce dependence on Taiwan over time. Europe and Japan are doing the same. This is the age of what some now call silicon sovereignty, the attempt by major powers to secure their own chip supply. But there is a major problem. Taiwan's success cannot be copied overnight. This is not just about building expensive factories. TSMC's dominance rests on decades of experience, a highly skilled workforce, dense supplier networks, and an industrial ecosystem that is extremely difficult to replicate. Even with massive investment, it could take years, perhaps much longer, for the world to meaningfully reduce its reliance on Taiwan. So for the foreseeable future, the vulnerability remains. And that means this is no longer just a story about Taiwan, or even just about chips. The global standoff over Taiwan and the chips it produces is more than a regional dispute. It is a geopolitical fault line running through the heart of the modern world. For decades, globalization created a hyper-efficient supply chain that made advanced technology cheaper, faster, and more accessible. But that era is ending. The world is moving into a new age of technological nationalism, where countries are racing to secure critical industries and reduce strategic dependence. And yet one reality still remains. The world runs on chips, and the center of the most advanced chip production still sits on an island claimed by China and protected indirectly by the United States. That means the future of global power may depend not only on armies and navies, but on fabs, transistors, and one of the most strategically exposed supply chains on Earth. So the deeper question is not simply who makes the most advanced chips, but who will control the systems the modern world cannot function without. Thank you for staying with the analysis. If you value strategic clarity over noise, subscribe to the channel for the next perspective.